Everybody, welcome to the Fashion Positive Plus launch webinar. My name is Annie Gullingsrud, and I'm the director of the Fashion Positive Initiative at the Cradle to Cradle Products Innovation Institute.
And I'm Lewis Perkins, and I'm the president of the Cradle to Cradle Products Innovation Institute. Thanks for joining us.
We are so happy that you are joining us today and for our big launch of the Fashion Positive Plus membership.
Exactly.
So excited. So just a quick little housekeeping tips is that all of you are on mute right now. So if you have a question, please use your chat box. We don't have a ton of time throughout the webinar to be able to answer questions, but we promise you we'll follow up with you afterwards and engage with you afterwards to make sure that those questions get answered. And this is about a 1 hour webinar. We'll go over in time a little bit. Maybe it will be about an hour and 15 minutes, but we promise to hold your attention. Fashion Positive Plus is a community of pioneering brands, designers, apparel companies, retailers, and suppliers working together to catalyze systems change, one material at a time. And we're going to tell you all about how Plus will do that in the coming months. So on the webinar in the next hour, we're going to tell you a little bit about how Plus membership will do that together through a volume pooling methodology. We're going to tell you about how you can get involved and what you can do next.
Great.
But first, we'd like to get an idea of who's in the room with us today. So we're going to put a poll up on your screen. So for those of you who are logged in, there's going to be a poll that pops up. We want to find out what type of company you represent, whether it's an apparel company, a designer, whether you're a supplier, or other. So if that poll could please come up, and we'll launch the poll. If you could fill out that poll.
Great. I think we've got apparel company, retailer, designer, consultant, student, other. So
we have a lot of people on the phone today.
We look forward to hearing from you guys.
So if you could just take a minute, fill out that poll for us. Great.
All right. You just click the box and hit submit.
Lauren, okay, I think let's go ahead and close that poll and we'll see the results.
Exciting. All right. Okay, so here's our results. Shall I read them out?
Yeah, please.
Okay, great. So the poll results are we have 18% apparel companies, we have 5% retailers, we have 21% designers today. Excellent. We have 6% students and 51% other.
Wow, that's a big other category.
That's a big other. So people may be defining themselves as manufacturer, supplier, assessor, partner. So yeah. We'll look forward to diving into that a little bit more.
Fantastic.
Great. So I wanted to talk just a little bit about setting the stage for why we're here and what we've been working on, not only on the Fashion Positive Initiative, but really what is the Cradle to Cradle vision. And, you know, this weekend, I was thinking a lot about getting on the phone with you guys, and Annie and I were talking a little bit yesterday. And I was thinking, what is it that really moves me about this work, and what is it that we believe is so impactful that we're bringing to the world and starting with this initiative with the fashion industry. And when you go back and think about how we started producing apparel and moving into an industrial movement 150, 200 years ago, we didn't know we were going to have the kind of limitations that we would have today. We didn't know that we were going to be looking against limitation of natural resources, limitation of clean water, the availability of precious minerals and metals that we would need for our products, the impact that it would have on our climate. These were not realities, and so we built a model where we could continue to scale and scale and scale. And today I think all of us are really looking at how do we shift the model on what was launched as a modern industrial production movement globally over 100 years ago, and how do we now maintain our ability to produce products and celebrate abundance and yet have a positive impact on the planet. Cradle to Cradle is really, to me, the solution to this thinking, because what it does is it emulates the way nature looks at everything. So whether it is the leaves falling off of a tree or the abundance of flowers on a bush, or whether it is the the dying carcass of a bird underneath a tree, everything is a nutrient for a future cycle. And while nature does have toxicity, nature knows how to assimilate it in a way that it goes back into the system for positive impact and for growth in whichever metabolism it's going to be a part of. So rather than man creating products and taking away, let's look to how nature contributes and gives back. Mm-hmm. So Cradle to Cradle is a model that says everything is a nutrient for a future cycle, whether that's a technical cycle like polyesters and nylons going upcycled into future products, open and closed loops of materials, or whether it's a biological nutrient safely going back into the earth. And if we're also embedding time and energy and water and human resources and labor into creating products, then shouldn't we look at how we can sustain the useful, not only life, but the use of that material in future cycles? So what Cradle to Cradle really is a program that's been working with companies well over the 15 years that the standard has been in place. It was developed by Michael Bromgart and William McDonough. We have the honor every day to be working on carrying this legacy forward, and the Institute was launched in 2010. The standard that was authored by MBDC and APEA came to us, and we've been a steward of that work. Our role now is to scale this in a way that works for business, in a way that works for the change that we all want to make. So we have over 250 companies that already work with Cradle to Cradle. We have over 460 certifications, and within those certifications we have multiple products. So we have over 5,500 products today. Now to me, that sounds great, but it's just a drop in the bucket. Where we want to go now is really into a movement of exponential growth. And so we believe that the work that we're doing at the Institute is about the verification of safe materials to be perpetually cycled with positive impact on humanity and the planet. And that if we can build ourselves as a partner with all of you as the verifier of safe materials for future circular cycles with positive impact, then we're addressing a need in the marketplace. And that's what you're telling us, and that's what we're doing.
Could you just, Louis, tell us a little bit about why that verification of the materials is so important?
Yeah, absolutely. I think anytime you're going through a transition to create standards, and I use that word plural because we are all working towards various standards of how buildings are built, how buildings are material banks, how products are designed, the processes, the inputs. You know, there's so many theories of change that are coming together during this time to move forward. But it's important that we really look at how do we know and how can we trust. And it isn't just us looking back to our supply chain, it's our consumers, customers looking at us as companies and brands. Anyone who's designing something needs to be able to share why this has been a verified material, a verified process, so we can have a commonality and benchmark on what we agree is a standard. Ultimately, this will all be part of the way we make things. We are working together as a collective society now to shift the way products are made, to shift the way materials are used in order to ensure that we're setting the future for positive impact. And in that transition phase, we need to have a quality of verification. Right. So Cradle to Cradle looks at 5 things. If I can jump into that real quick.
Sure.
Great. So Cradle to Cradle looks at 5 areas. The first one is material health, what's in the product. Material reutilization, future cycles, biological or technical. The third is clean water stewardship. The fourth is renewable energy usage. And the fifth is social fairness practices. And so if you look at those and you think about what I said earlier about safe materials, perpetually cycled, with positive impact on humanity and the planet, you have the 2 inputs of material health, material reuse, and you have the processes of water, energy, and social. Mm-hmm.
So if you want to learn more about the Cradle to Cradle Certified Standard, we have a webinar targeted to exactly that on October 18th. And we're going to be talking about the Cradle to Cradle Certified Standard and fashion materials. So we'll talk specifically about fashion materials. And usually at this time, I want to say that the verification piece is exactly why I'm here at the Cradle to Cradle Products Innovation Institute. And it's a story I like to tell because as a designer, as a fashion designer, before this essentially, I was struggling to select materials, and there were all these labels on the materials, and they said eco or sustainable, and then I had learned about Cradle to Cradle, I had learned about circularity, I had learned that what goes in will come out, And I felt like all of these fabrics, all of these materials just weren't totally addressing the full picture.
Annie, I agree, and what you're saying also echoes with me and how I got started in this when I joined the Institute in 2012, and I started talking to so many brands, so many valued partners, people like Amber Valletta, who I hope we can get on in a little bit. Great. And folks at the CFDA, many of you and companies, and we all started this dialogue, and what I consistently heard from people was, we love Cradle to Cradle. It's a North Star that we hold. We've read the book. This is definitely the vision and the truth of where we all want to go. But in order for this to work, you've got to give me the list of preferred materials. You've got to show me who the list of manufacturers that can produce in this way. If you expect this whole industry to transition rapidly into a place of circular, safe materials and design, it's not going to happen one little project at a time. This has to be a collective. This is all of us working together. And so what you've just shared and the experience that I've had speaking with many of you over the last few years is to develop something that is truly collaborative so that we can move this forward together, lowering costs, scaling this in a fast way.
I would say collaborative and also circular too. So not just addressing the inputs, not just addressing the production, but also addressing its circularity and saying, well, is this material prepped for where to go next? And that's exactly what we do. So I just want to say we're getting a notice here that we do have Amber on the line, and it's a perfect time to bring her into the conversation because we're starting to talk about fashion positive.
Excellent.
So team, how do we get Amber on the line so we can hear her?
I'm here.
Okay.
Great. Okay. Hi, Amber.
Hi, everybody. Sorry about the technical.
Hi. So glad you're here with us, and sorry about the confusion.
Thank you for having me. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Great.
All right. So Amber, without too much feedback, I hope, what I'd love to do is kind of share a little bit about when I first met you and I came to your home and we sat down and we really talked about what was happening in the industry. And at that time, you shared with me why this is important to you and why you have really taken on sustainability as a critical part of your mission, but also your belief system, and how you want to use your role as an influencer in the industry, in several industries, to carry this message. Can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, I started this journey many years ago, but I kind of became cognizant of really what was going on in the industry. Like you mentioned, probably about 5-6 years ago, I was researching how to build. Well, I was researching building a brand, and then started kind of putting down my core values, and I really realized how important it was for me to make the connection between my business and the world around me. And fashion is one of the biggest polluters in the world, business-wise, and it also has great influence, and in a very positive way. I mean, it helps turn the global economy, and provides many jobs, and also makes us feel good. And I knew at that point, just because it's also my passion, and I love fashion, that we really need to modernize our business, and that we thrive on innovation and creativity. And it seemed to me a natural fit for me to implement these types of values and modalities in my business. And so from that's how I started Master and Muse, and realized that I needed to not only work on my business, but help support those around me, the designers and other influencers in the industry. So that's how that started. And then obviously I read Cradle to Cradle and met you. And I love what Fashion Positive is about and what Cradle to Cradle is about. And I do really believe that we can advance the circular economy, and it's through tools like Fashion Positive and now Fashion Positive Plus that I think we're going to see real change in the industry.
a little bit about one of the other conversations you and I've had about how we're all drawn to fashion, for a reason. I mean, it's an art, it's a craft, it's beauty, it's an expression of humanity, and also it is sacred in a sense. It's like it clothes us. It's what we wear. It's what we wrap our children in. It's what we celebrate. And so you and I have talked about this, and we want to know that beauty and style and creativity and expression is beautiful from the beginning of the supply chain all the way through the end, that there's an embedded story in everything that we have that is of positivity and positive impact. And it was the way we once produced textiles and blankets and linens, and they were gifted and special, and we treated them in a way that really carried our cultural heritages, and the patterns and colors and designs we used had meaning. And so I just kind of share that with you because you've inspired me to really think about it as well too. Is that this isn't a time to shame the industry. This is a time to celebrate. And I kind of want to get your thoughts a little bit about how you perceive that and the role that we all have to move the industry forward.
Well, I definitely piggyback on what you said about fashion and textiles. I mean, how much it says about who we are, and it's an expression towards the rest of the world, what we put on, and yes, some of it is out of necessity, but also fashion can be a luxury, and I think we're at a tipping point in our industry where we must modernize. It is our responsibility as stewards of our planet, but also just as great influencers. As I've said before, fashion has such power in the world and in society. That we must create an industry that is positive and it contributes to itself and to the planet and people it serves. So, I think working with people like you all, Fashion Positive and Cradle to Cradle, brands and leaders in the industry and designers will be able to really educate themselves on what a circular economy means and what it means to positively influence the business from the beginning of picking raw materials all the way to the design to the final life of a product. And hopefully the final life is just replenishing and going back into the system. And I mean, it's so exciting. I think this is what to me is so exciting about all of it is just that fashion thrives on innovation and creativity. And this is exactly what we're talking about. And the business will modernize, and we will see new fabrics, and we will see new ways to produce, to distribute, even how we're advertising now. I mean, everything is changing, and I just think it's incredibly exciting. And I hope more and more people, and I'm quite certain more and more people will be getting involved because it's the way of the future, and fashion tells that story.
Okay, and one last thought I have as you're talking, I'm thinking about materials. We're going to be talking a lot about materials today. So why is it important that we provide designers with materials? Why is it important that we retool and innovate fibers, dyes, trims, buttons, zippers, yarns? Like, in your opinion, like, why is that missing, and why is this needed, and why?
Can you all hear me? Okay. Okay, I lost audio for a second from you guys. Again, the business is quite antiquated, and we're producing things from the beginning, raw materials from the beginning, without any thought of where they will end up. And it is critical at this point to start designing and finding materials that are produced in the right way, that they're going to be a positive influence or positive effect after they're used. And everything, like you said, Lewis, from buttons, zippers, fasten, things that fasten, everything must be thought in a new way, and how we can use them again, because we do have limited resources. We're not, there's only one planet, so we definitely have to take care of what we have, and it's important that all designers and manufacturers and people involved in the industry are able to share data and research and information and materials, that is how we're really going to change, is by sharing the knowledge. And so by you all building this library, I think it's just a vital piece that we're really missing, because there's so many people who don't know, and they don't have the accessibility to these materials and these new ways of thinking about business and design.
Thank you, Amber. And as I'm listening to you, I'm also thinking about and showing the value, that we can say it's not just that this would end up in a landfill or have a negative impact, from the way it was made. It's also about, and it's valuable. We can take this back and it can have more use as a material. We can use this from the fiber level over again, cottons to cellulosics and separating blends and ways we can really get innovative around this. So I'm jumping ahead because I'm getting excited.
Let me jump ahead too.
Yeah.
I want to add one more thing too.
Thanks,
Amber. You said this important thing about sharing the materials, and I just got so excited because what we're going to be talking about in a couple of minutes, we're going to be sharing the materials, but we're also going to be creating and developing the materials together. So we'll get to share the materials through our materials library as we have it, but we're also going to be able, together, we've designed a way to create and develop those materials. So really exciting. And I think we have one more question for Amber, and then we can move on.
My final question was just, why is fashion positive important to the industry?
Fashion positive, obviously, is so important to the industry because of what we've been talking about sharing materials and building a library where designers and people in the industry can go and find materials that are going to serve them and serve the rest of us in a very positive way. And we need this sort of leadership, and who better to do it than you guys? I mean, we're talking about a circular economy, and you all are very well versed in that. And I think, I think with all of your accomplishments and capabilities, we can see new materials and be able to share them very easily now.
Thank you, Amber. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for making it through our technical difficulties.
Thanks, Amber. That was amazing. Thank you.
All right. Annie.
Okay, so what we're going to do now is tell you a bit about Fashion Positive Plus. So we're going to move into, we could sort of advance to this slide. So as Amber said, what we're doing is building a library of verified cradle-to-cradle certified circular economy ready materials, and we're doing that together. So what we're doing is hosting a community and thought leadership for apparel. We're fostering collaboration, and together, we'll tell you about how we're going to do this. Together, we're going to identify, assess, innovate, and certify those materials so they're available to you.
Yeah, and catalog and curate, with us all, so that we have a collection that can be easily accessible.
And we currently have our Fashion Positive Materials collection. You can find this online, and it has about 50 materials for fashion. So that includes dyes, a portfolio of different colors of dyes for different fibers. We have yarns, fabrics, we have trims such as buttons and elastomers. We have sewing yarns. We have a finishing we have a tanning treatment for leather. So there's about 50 materials in there. Now we have a great starting point.
That's what I was going to say.
Yes.
I was going to say we are very proud of this work, and we're very proud of our partners out there working to bring these companies in and to bring this into the materials library. But we also know 50 materials isn't going to transform the industry.
It's really not.
We're looking for exponential growth. It is now time in the history of this work and all the work that you're doing in sustainability within your companies or within your own framework. It's now time for exponential growth. And we can only do that if we do it together and if we identify the pathways together and start rapidly moving materials into a catalog, safe, verified database of resources.
Right. We've really found a way to scale and accelerate this work together. And the only way that we've found to do it is to group in a collaborative several apparel brands. We'll talk specifically about how we do that. In our experience in the last couple of years working with apparel companies, we've done it successfully, but as Louis said, we have found a way to do it quicker, faster, and higher scale and higher volume, which we'll talk to you about in a minute. But first, let's talk a little bit about materials. So I'm using this word materials. We're saying materials, and what does that actually mean to us? So we're just going to use my shirt as an example. When we talk about materials, we're almost looking at a shirt as a kit of materials. So if you could pull from a portfolio of materials, you have this beautiful portfolio, and you're putting those things together, and you're making a shirt, or you're making a pair of pants, or you're making a jacket. So as you'll see on this slide, when we talk about materials, we're actually talking about everything in the supply chain, whether it's interfacing, that hang tag, the buttons down the front of my shirt. This shirt isn't dyed, but the dye, the care tag on the inside. This shirt is actually a blend, believe it or not, so it means that those raw materials were cotton, a polyamide, and an elastane, so that's a pretty big blend. And then there's a sewing thread as well. So that's what we mean when we say material. And what we'd like you to do is take a moment, everybody look down at their shirts. If you could, see how many materials are in your shirt. So we're sort of testing you to see, do you get what a material is when we talk about it? And how many materials do you have in your shirt? So make sure to count, if your shirt is dyed, so in this case there's probably some dyes on the fabric, I see sewing yarn, I see these metallized buttons, I see a little tag. So Louis, it looks like you have about 6, oh wait, you have a little lining on the inside here. So there's a tag on the back. I think I counted about 7 or 8 materials. So if everyone could fill in their poll, sort of look down at just their tops, whatever top you're wearing, and count the amount of materials you have on the top that you're wearing. And we're doing this to demonstrate to you that the way that we view materials, there's actually a lot out there. And we can look at materials as a dye, we can look at materials as a sewing yarn, and we can also look at it as a potential for impact upstream. So that's what we're intending to do. So did I give everybody enough time to sort of look down at their shirts? If you could all fill in the poll, I think we can close the poll at this point. And so let's just take a look at how many materials everyone thinks that they have. So
Excellent.
poll results. Oh, interesting.
Shall I read it?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So 32% of you said you only had 1 to 3 materials in your shirt. Half of you, 51% that is, said 4 to 6. 11% had more than 7, 7 to 10, and 6% of you said more than. I'd like to see those more than 10 materials.
What are you wearing?
Sequins, embroidery. Yeah. Great. All right.
We wanted to do this just to point out that we actually do have a lot of opportunity, and we do have a lot of work to do. So half of us, and it looks like there's a couple of attendees, a couple of 100 attendees on the call. We have almost 200 attendees, and half of you have 4 to 6 materials. And I think a lot of those materials are some of the same and some different. So. Yeah. So we just want to do this to point out we actually have a lot of work to do and a lot of opportunity here.
We do.
So let's tell everybody how we're going to approach this through Plus.
Great. So we have been working over the last several years with brands to really look at how do you apply cradle to cradle methodology and the standard to the material level. And ultimately what we do want is a whole industry of materials and finished products that emulate this cradle-to-cradle thinking and that are made in a way that they can be easily disassembled to go into future cycles, whatever that is. So that is certainly the North Star. But today we realize we have so much work to do in terms of how we get there and what common materials we may be looking at. And in order to really excel into exponential growth, we've got to do it with the supply chain partners that we know and that we all source from. So that's the starting point. And I think the where we can do the heavy lifting together really starts with who are we all using. And we recognize a lot of those materials will then get sent to another place to be woven or knit, or they'll get sent to another place to be assembled and cut and sew. But if we start at who are we sourcing these common basic materials from, and who are some of the largest volume players in this? So we really started this by looking at the work that had been done by our founders over many years of working with not only this industry but others. And when you start to look at what the materials are in terms of nylons and cottons and dyes and such, and you look at across different industries, from commercial fabrics to carpet to, you see names like Dow, DuPont, BASF, Invista, Lenzing, Teijin. I mean, names come up over and over in different categories because they're making fibers and materials across industries. So if we start to really look at how do we collectively go to the people that we're all sourcing from and say, hey, we want to innovate with you, and we know there's some low-hanging fruit. 70% of the materials perhaps we can focus on are things that were already invented, already out there. We just need to put them through a cradle-to-cradle verification so that we can ensure that these are safe materials to go into a circular economy made with positive impact on humanity and the planet. But secondarily, there's also going to be a lot of new innovations out there. We need certain new materials. We need replacement materials for cotton. We need replacement materials for types of polyesters that are out there that may not have a positive impact because of heavy metals as catalysts. So there's all kinds of considerations as we look at what exists and what doesn't yet exist, and how can we create space together to tackle the big part but attract and draw the smaller part. And then all of this goes through a common understanding of what do we mean when we say circular ready materials, what do we mean when we say verified for future cycles.
So I just want to talk a little bit about what our experience has been like in the last couple of years, because this really organically drove the strategy here of collaboration, where we have been having several, one-on-one projects with our phase 1 partners at Fashion Positive. And we absolutely returned and delivered cradle-to-cradle certified materials into our collection. You'll find them in the collection. But one of the things we also realized throughout that process is there were shared materials in separate projects that weren't sharing together. And so there was a repetition of innovation. There's a repetition, there's longer time that was repeated over here. Best practices weren't shared. And so it's almost like, well, those projects absolutely worked and delivered these certified materials. We were spending more time and spending more money separately. And we started to say, well, what would happen if we brought, not only those two companies together, but a collaborative of companies to identify what shared materials we possibly had. And so when I say a shared material, in this case, I'm really talking about a pre-competitive material. Yeah. So we're not talking about, if all you guys are thinking, oh, the proprietary materials, oh no, like we don't want to share that. We're not talking about that. We're actually talking, when you go deeper down into the supply chain, we're talking about those dyes, we're talking about those trims, those base yarns. And I have to say that in our experience, we have absolutely seen the impact, positive, we hope, in most cases, that's what we've returned, but the positive impact that a dye can have upstream into the garment, right? So we've seen that on the opposite, if that material hasn't been improved through the cradle-to-cradle certified standard, we have seen the negative impact up. And we've seen the finished apparel carry those impacts up the supply chain. So we thought, hey, we really need to start from the beginning, and we need to do this together.
And we need to go upstream. And the power of bringing a collective of brands and suppliers as partners together is that we can tackle this together. Because I think as our program has been assessing and certifying products over the last 10, 15 years, we also realized that sometimes, and it was the way it should be designed, there's an arrangement around proprietary. We're going to assess and verify this, but it's not going to be shared outside of our company because these are products that we're innovating, and we're using it as a market advantage. We're more sustainable than our competitors. I think we're all agreeing. We're hearing this, last spring in Copenhagen. We're hearing this from the Sustainable Apparel Coalition. We're hearing this at the CFDA. Everyone is saying this is not something to be competitive about. Sustainability, we cannot afford to make sustainability our competitive advantage as a one-off. And yes, I know there's going to be unique things we all do, and open markets and free markets will drive that, and competition is beneficial. But when it comes to the base of the mass of common materials, pre-competitive materials that we're all utilizing, can't we agree and can't we work with, these are the inputs that we want to start with? Right. And I know this is something our friends and partners at Ellen MacArthur Foundation are talking a lot about with the new plastics economy. Rather than have multiple types of plastics that are out there that we have to look at for the future, let's agree on verification of several types of materials that can go into all future products. And that's what we want to do here as a starting point, and allowing this working group with us on the Plus model to really drive what's right for industry.
Right. And the way that we're going to do that is through a volume pooling methodology. And it's quite simple. I'm going to simplify it. We're going to have a separate webinar that's going to talk exactly about how we're going to do that as far as the behind the scenes. And that webinar is on November 15th. I'll show you that slide in a moment. The volume pooling methodology is quite simple. We're going to collect a group of plus members, plus fashion positive members. We're going to give these members a starting point for the priority materials that we believe are priority, we need to address right away, and we need to improve them right away. We're going to survey these members. We're going to say to them, how much are you using of these materials and where are you getting them from? And that information will absolutely not be shared with the rest of the group. It's really for us to understand where is the potential impact through volume.
Yes.
Where is the potential impact through volume? So the way that we're looking at impact, and we'll say positive impact through volume. So we're not just doing that with one large company. We're going to look at the volume across many companies of those shared pre-competitive materials. So again, those pre-competitive are those materials you guys know you're all sharing. I know you're sharing them, because a lot of you have said, well, we know so-and-so is using these materials, but you haven't exactly spoken together, so we know you're all sharing. The manufacturers have told us you're all sharing a lot of these same materials. So we're going to survey you together. We're going to find out what are those shared materials. And I can say this alone is a pretty big deal. So we're going to do that first. And then we're going to identify priority materials together through that data. It's going to show us some work streams. And then we're going to move forward with assessing them through the Cradle to Cradle certified standard. And to us, that means let's review them against those 5 areas of energy, water, social, material reuse, and material health. So we're going to assess those, and then we're going to make necessary improvements along the way. So our assessors will work with the supply chain and potentially the group to make the right improvements we need to actually say that those materials are circular.
Absolutely.
And then we're going to make those materials available to our members. And we believe that you will be able to easily integrate some of these materials back into your supply chain, thus making a positive impact. Because we see a lot of these materials as, while the improvements are going to be made, they're not going to vastly change the performance characteristics. They're not going to vastly change the functionality. You're going to be able to easily integrate those into the supply chain.
Excellent.
So let's just go through real quick a pre-competitive material. We obviously want to drive this point home because we've said it a lot. So we're talking about yarns, dyes, pigments, potentially recycled polyesters, spandex, buttons, zippers, and thread. Yeah, it's interesting that spandex is on the list. So a couple of the things we've heard in the last years are, we really want to innovate. We really want an alternative to this material, but we can't do it alone. We've heard that. And then also through our research, we know that some of these materials, from a cradle-to-cradle perspective, absolutely need improvements. When it comes to recycled polyester, absolutely need improvements. There are certain areas that, yes, we have great starting points right now that companies are using, but there are improvements that need to be made to ensure that what's going out into the world is healthy and clean for the planet and for the people.
And Annie, I think you make a great point about that, because we're talking a lot about what's already known. Like, these suppliers, you work with these suppliers, but what about the ones that we don't yet? And we're really creating a space, too, not only for us to address the known and the existing and to verify those, to ensure the way those products are made has positive impact for circularity, but at the same time, we're really creating, and I said it earlier, but we're really creating a space also where a lot of these new innovators, these new materials, and you're reading about them, your companies are giving awards to them, you're hearing about them getting funded, they may have come to you and called you and said, we have this new technology innovation. Some of that you may have proprietary relationships with, but there's a lot that's not, and we also believe this work with you all can create that pipeline for bringing in all the new innovations, and then how do we know it's sustainable? How do we know that this new material made from algae, or this new material that's made from some kind of replacement fiber that's grown organically, and how do we know? And so verification becomes really important in this place, and we want to have the same consistent lens through which we look at common materials we're already sourcing as to new innovations coming in, because there's chemical processing involved, there's production quality and process that's involved, and we believe that the Cradle to Cradle standard can become this gold standard for how do we know this is safe materials, professionally cycled with positive impact on humanity and planet.
Right. And I just want to say a lot of us throw around the word innovative materials, and to us it's an important aspect of what we do, and it's an important aspect of what we want to develop and share together. However, an innovative material is not a verified material. It's not verified to go out there into the economy and to come back. It's not verified clean in and out. I know a lot of these companies are actually developing production processes that they consider to be sustainable, but I mean, I'm not sure, and that's why I really rely on the Cradle to Cradle certified standard to bring me back the information to say, yes, this clears the ban list, it clears the, we'll talk a little bit more about the standard on our October call. But I need that information to come back to us and say, yes, it's verified, and also it's equipped to be recyclable or compostable. It's equipped to become a part of a functioning material in a circular economy. And that's essentially what we're talking about, is developing a collaborative around those shared materials. And, like Louis said, we know a lot of you have relationships with some of these innovative suppliers. That is totally okay, but the same companies have said to us, well, we have these relationships with these suppliers, but we're interested in these guys over here too. How do we look at them? We might not have the space to give them all of our time, but we'd like to look at them as well. And so that's what you're invited to come on board with, is to be exposed to a variety of different material work streams through traditional materials that you're using all of the time, like dyes and pigments. By the way, those need an incredible amount of innovation. And then also through some innovative material work streams. And for Plus members, you will be the ones that are defining what those material work streams are. And so we'll talk a bit more about that volume pooling methodology on November 15th, so you'll all get a registration link.
But I just want to add to what you were saying around this concept of demand, because this isn't just a hypothesis. We're being told by some of your suppliers, we can have those dyes. We've had those dyes.
Right.
But there's no demand. You need to show me that there's demand for this. And so what our role has been over the last several years is to start to aggregate the demand coming from the brands we've been working with. And now taking that to a higher level really does ensure that if this is a material that exists in pilot, it exists in test, or it's used in another sector, or pigment used in another industry, now is the time for us to really vet what chemistry and what materials already do exist and that could come into and be verified against a positive impact from a material health standpoint. So to me, the demand component of this is really what we all get to do now, is to show, no, this is what we want.
It's a pretty simple concept, the power of the group. It's a pretty simple concept. And I've actually been to a lot of these suppliers around the world, and I've been asking them, well, do you have this? Do you have a recycled polyester without an antimony catalyst used, or do you have this type of dye? And they say, yes, actually we do. We've had that for 10 years, but we don't have the demand behind it. And so we believe that we can create the demand through the power of the group. Right?
That's right.
And so we know that through our own experience, that, and I'm sure through your experience as well, is if you're an apparel company going to a supplier asking for a specific thing, if you're a pretty large company, they're probably going to do some work for you.
Yeah.
But imagine if we have a collaborative of very large apparel companies and very small and medium-sized apparel companies going to the suppliers and say, we need this. Not only do we need it, in some ways we demand it, and by the way, we're going to use it, we're going to purchase it. That's what we're going to do.
And a large part of you answered the survey at the beginning of the hour saying that you were designers, and this is for the designers. This is for the ability for creativity to continue, for us to be able to say to our designers on our team in design schools, the next generation of people that are designing and making products, we have the resources for you. We're not going to limit your creativity. We're not going to limit your ability to design and create with abundance. Here's the resources you need to use. And so for those of you on the call that aren't in a big brand and say, well, will I join this or will I not, there's a role for you all that we'll get into in the future, because we're doing this for you all as well. Now, can I talk a little bit about where we're going to start with the materials and what we already know?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So we talk a lot about, preferred materials, and we're going to start with these common materials. Well, we have a starting point, and that's good news. When we launched Fashion Positive several years back, we commissioned our founders, MBDC, McDonough Brongard Design Chemistry, to engage in a study with us on what are the preferred materials or the material opportunities for circularity. What are the material opportunities for cradle-to-cradle design? And we were able to prioritize a list of material, fiber types, dyes, trims, and look at what is the most appropriate today for going into circularity, not by manufacturer, but just by type. So it's a lot like, looking at, is polyester over cotton over, over this kind of dye versus that. And so we were able to prioritize. So we have a marching orders in terms of what's cradle to cradle appropriate or ready. However, we think the really interesting part gets in what's priority 2, what's priority 3, because we want to solve for all levels. And at the same time, when they did this work for us, they said, we can also share with you that we've assessed a lot of these materials already through other projects. They're locked in NDAs, so we're not going to share that information necessarily today, but we can tell you we've done projects within these categories, and I think what's appropriate for us to know is that relationships exist. A lot of these suppliers are aware of Cradle to Cradle, but maybe it's been in another industry sector. Maybe it was in carpet, maybe it was in commercial textiles. So now we're really looking at how can we bring that innovation forward. Right. So we have a marching point as to who we think the suppliers are, and we're going to bring this back to the Plus Model group. And as a working group, we'll all vet that list and create the next phase plan for where we start together.
Right. And so we'll be releasing that priority materials list on our next call on October 18th. And so the way that list, there's a lot of expertise and knowledge and experience that went into the creation of that list. And that list, again, is a starting point for coming to you, the potential Plus members, and saying, what of these, so for you, we really need to know which ones of these are you using in high volume, and what are high priority materials and suppliers to you as a company. And so we'll be, that list was actually created looking at high sales volume of these potential materials, we'll be looking at shared materials, and then potential integration into the circular economy, of course. And then it looks at the potential from a chemistry perspective, a potential from a reuse perspective. So we'll be sharing that list for you. And again, what it is, it's a starting point, us coming to you and saying, hey, we have a call to action. We need to work on these materials together, and we believe that if we're not able to do this together, it might be slow and it might not ever happen. But this is why. This is absolutely why we need to work on these materials together. And we'll be talking about that a little bit with you on the October call. So again, just to repeat what we're proposing to do here through Plus is that we have a starting point, this priority materials list. We bring it to you, the Plus member. So you will become a Plus member. We will tell you how to do that in a few slides. You become a Plus member. We survey you to understand what are your priority materials and what are the high volume materials that you're using. We're aggregating that data in a very secure way to understand the impact that we can get across many apparel companies together.
And there's a role for suppliers too, and I know there's suppliers on this call as well too, because we want you to join and be a part of this as well too, because rather than react to what you're hearing is not appropriate for circularity, why don't you get on this side of the table with us and let's create together, let's verify together. And so for those of you who come from the supply chain and are making these materials that go into fashion, we've been speaking to a lot of you already, but you are very integral to this as well.
You can come to us and say, we think this material needs to be in the materials library, and then we'll be able to share that with our community.
Because we also want to respond to what you all have been telling us, which is show us the demand and we can innovate these materials or we can verify these materials through Cradle to Cradle.
Right. So again, just join us on October 18th. We'll send you out the registration link, and we're going to do two things on this call. We're going to talk a bit about the standard. So we're not going to give you a super in-depth look into it, but probably about 30 minutes, which is nice. We'll give you an overview of the 5 attributes. But what's important is that how that point of view and perspective really leads into our point of view on the priority materials. And we'll be talking specifically about materials like recycled polyester, dyes. That's a huge part of this conversation. We'll talk about, well, okay, some great dyes exist right now, but why do we need to improve them? What's sort of the reason behind that? So we'll be talking a little bit about that on the call as well, so you'll get some in-depth information. So what we're going to be doing is together producing high-volume Cradle to Cradle certified pre-competitive building blocks that you'll be able to integrate into your supply chain. So that's what Plus is doing. We're creating materials, identifying materials together, improving them through the Cradle to Cradle certified standard, and then you'll be able to integrate them very easily into your supply chain. That will be a nice portfolio of the more traditional materials, such as dyes, and then some more innovative materials, and maybe that's an an innovative dye technology or a new type of fiber or something like that. So again, we'll talk a bit more deeply about that on the October 18th call, so be sure to join us then.
Great.
So yeah, let's talk about how do you join.
So where we are right now is that we are asking you all to join and to join us, and some of you already have, and so that's exciting. And
Who has?
Well, Amy, you tell me who has joined.
Yeah, we're so excited to say that H&M is the first member to join Plus. So they just recently joined. I'm not actually sure if they were able to make it on the call today, but we are so pleased to say that we do have our first member, and that's H&M.
Yeah, and we're really proud of the work that they're doing around circularity, and know that together we can all guide each other to ensure that the future of fashion, fast fashion, luxury fashion can all benefit from doing this work together. So that being said, we're in conversations with many of you. In fact, I would not be surprised if Annie and the team hasn't spoken personally to everybody that's on this call right now, because I know they're constantly updating and talking and speaking to members of your team. So we're in that phase of like, well, who's joined, who's not joined, because we know how the industry works. We know people like to belong to things that other people belong to, but this is really about doing the work. So what we've done is we've designed a membership model with levels. If you look on your slides, you'll see the levels. It's very consistent with other working groups and industry collaboratives that you've joined. So we've benchmarked this to be similar to the price points you're used to putting through your budget. And we know that with this, as we run the numbers of looking at how many partners, it creates a solid a bulk financing to do this work. And so these funds will be used really to build this movement together, but also to encourage the supply chain to do the heavy lifting on this innovation themselves, but know that there's a revolving fund that was created several years ago that we already have several hundred thousand, it's in euros, several hundred thousand euros in, thanks to the Dune Foundation of the Dutch Postcode Lottery and Eric and Wendy Schmidt through their philanthropies. And we're grateful for the beginning of that, and we've already started putting out loans and small grants and small interest rate loans towards this work to help stimulate it. We know with the major suppliers, we're going to encourage them to come to us, but a large part of this is stimulating the growth and the work together. And so your dues are going to go towards running the program, building it, creating the collaborative, putting the right resources that we need to get this work done, that you'll see the benefit of your membership coming back to you, because it's all designed really to move this forward. With that being said, I know that what we're thinking is we would love for everyone to get approved in their budget cycle right now for 2017 funding at the various levels. I'm not going to read these through. They're on your slide. If you've had a charter before, you'll notice that we added the $15,000 level because we're responding to many of you who asked for this, that the leap between the bottom and the second was too wide. So we've added that level for you all as you requested. That being said, we would like to have as many pledges as possible to start our inaugural class in January, and then certainly by the 1st of March, we want full dedication of those who are going to join. But the payments can be made next year. If you have surplus in your budget and you want to go ahead and pay your dues now, we certainly can take them. But we also want to work with how you all establish your approval process and your funding cycles within your company.
Right, perfect. So what we'll be doing is taking pledges throughout 2016, and that doesn't actually mean we're not getting started on the work, because we can easily get started now. So what we'll be doing is, you'll see on the left side where it says survey, that surveying is going to take a couple of months to understand what those materials are and those shared materials. So we'll be getting started on that right now, and then so we'll spend 2016 getting those pledges in and actually surveying and leading into 2017. So you can join us now, you can pledge, you don't have to have the budget, or you can, but we're looking for pledges right now. Now, we also would like you to join us on October 18th, where we'll be talking more about the certification itself and that priority materials list. I think it's going to be a pretty interesting call. This is a huge area of passion for me, where we can talk about specific materials. We'll probably use a couple of case studies materials, and so we'll be feeding you some information about the Cradle to Cradle point of view and why it's so equipped to handle that circular economy and what we need to do in order to get there. And then on November 15th, you can join us again to discuss the volume pooling methodology. So if you're a little bit, a little like questioning the survey part, and where is this information going to go? We're going to tell you all that information on the November 15th webinar. And then we're going to have we're planning, just so you know, we're planning a get together and a workshop at Parsons in March. And then we'll be convening, yeah, we're so excited about that. And we'll also be convening our Plus membership together at a working day in May at the now annual Copenhagen Fashion Summit.
Yeah, so thank you to our partners at the Copenhagen Fashion Summit for providing a day for us to bring our partners in, who most likely will already be traveling to Copenhagen that week for many of the events that happen during the Fashion Summit. So we're excited to be having a meeting there as well too. So looking forward to that gathering in March at Parsons and again in May in Copenhagen.
And there'll be more of a detailed schedule coming over. So I think as we wrap up, we've been talking for about an hour now, and I'm just going to maybe say some closing thoughts, and Louis, you could jump in and say some closing thoughts. And before I do that, really reach out to me, Annie, at c2ccertified.org. You can go onto our website. If you have some additional questions about the dues or the schedule or what we're doing together, just reach out to us. We have definitely some additional information on our website, and we're really ready to get started, and we need you. And so wrapping up here, I would say that the materials economy is the foundation for the circular economy. So if we don't have a clean flow of materials, we're not going to have a functioning circular economy. We just aren't. So let's get together and develop that materials economy together. I think that we all know that if we're talking about circular economy practice, it's pretty obvious that we're not going to be able to do that alone. I mean, I don't know how many of you have tried to do that. I know we have tried to do it one-on-one. It is just, if it could happen, it's going to happen very, very slow, but there are so many areas and so many systems and so many companies and organizations that are required. So we're going to help bring that together. We're going to create the foundation. We're going to create those materials, those clean and safe materials together that are ready for the circular economy. And we absolutely know that we can't do that one-on-one. We absolutely know that. And so we've come up with a way through Plus that we can do it together. And we believe that based on our experience that it's absolutely will help us scale and accelerate into a functioning circular economy that's within reach.
Great. And in closing, thank you, Annie. I'd like to think about just a minute, why are we all called to this work? I mean, what is it that made you want to step into a role in sustainability within your company, within the brand, design school? You know, where were you first sparked by this work? What was the vision that you had and why? For some of you, it might have been just that your boss said, hey, this is a new market segment, can you work on this? You know, and then you sort of had your own self-actualization around what's really happening on the planet and why this is so important. Some of you may not be convinced. It may just be your job and you have to report back to your boss or to your CFO. What's the value of this work? Others of you, really, it's in your heart, it's in your soul and your DNA to do this work. And I think about, you know, we've been partnering with Google on our technology, and I remember having a conversation with one of our friends over at Google who said, you don't need one Google, you need 10 Googles. You know, you guys need you need 10 of us, you know. And you thought, wow, well, Google's pretty big, you know. But I get it, you know, and that's what we're here today too, is to say we don't need just one of you. We don't need just 10 of you, we need all of you. But we're excited to start where we are today, and it makes me think a lot about why we're doing this work. Let's not drag our feet anymore. Let's really step this up and sort of quoting a wonderful indigenous wisdom, we're the ones we've been waiting for. So let's get started.
Let's get started. Thank you all so much for joining us for this hour. We are so excited to bring this to you. And again, visit us at our website. Reach out to me directly. I know most of you probably talk to me on a weekly basis, but reach out to me directly. Let us know if you want to join Plus. Let us know if you have additional questions. We are so excited to get started, and we can get started right away.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Scott Hahn, muscle brother. Yay, great job. Oh, awesome. Calling all hot men to this work. That's excellent. Oh, that's so funny.
Okay. Great webinar. No, there's more and more. You guys should read all of our accolades.
Edward Johansson, great webinar. Looking forward to the next one. Sports designer from Boris, Sweden.
Thanks all. Great and inspiring. Great webinar. Looking forward to the next one. Edward Johnson says Edward Johnson.
He was trying to send his contact information.
I wish you could make that bigger. It's easier to. And I've got the questions already.
That's cute.
Glad Scott was listening. That's good.
I'm trying to type everybody's name really on. I got 186.
Got this one. Can you use this?
Yeah.
Deal. Christian Dior. I was like, oh.
I think she's responding to my comment. She'd asked a question.
Oh, okay. I see.
Christian Denter.
I see the first one.
Yeah, well, there's microplastics. Oh, I said that we would talk about that later. And she says, deal.
You wrote down all the questions?
I have all the questions. No, you don't. And
Oh, yay, Annie.
I mean, I haven't closed the.
That's your first hour, right?